Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, shiur Torah, bruchim habayim. We're back, Baruch Hashem, after a long break. We're dealing with some health issues, Baruch Hashem. Thank you for everyone for the prayers and all the nice things that you guys did, Baruch Hashem. I appreciate it. BeEzrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us the strength to continue teaching and learning, and BeEzrat Hashem continue bringing Am Yisrael closer and closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tonight, we're starting BeEzrat Hashem a new series after completing the monumental work of the Jewish Ashkafa series of 4.5 years, where we're learning the Torah of the Chazon Ish. We decided that it's time to start a new series that has to do with Chassidut. And the reasoning behind it is very deep, and we'll discuss it BeEzrat Hashem. But tonight's shiur is going to be, and the whole series will be for the Refuah Shlema and Atzlacha Rabba for Rabbeinu v'Moreno Rav Efraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Sarah bat Levana, Ovadia ben Levana, Yosef ben Levana, Avi Mori David ben Nesriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Zora, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahides that continue to support our organization and do all the wonderful things to help us continue helping Am Yisrael get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's been many different tests, Baruch Hashem, over these last several weeks, even beyond the scope of this shiur. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows we did everything we could to withstand the tests, and BeEzrat Hashem, I'm sure that many of you are also having tests during this time, because we're seeing that the Midat Adin, the measure of judgment, is in the world right now, and as the prophet tells us, the prophet Zechariah tells us that at the end of days, aside from the war and the anarchy and the craziness that's going to happen in the world, where there's going to be all types of enemies of the Torah showing their true face. All types of things will happen in the world. One of the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also going to do is that he's going to test every single person to see who's really with Hashem and who's not. Who's going to fold? Who's going to fold under the pressure and who's not? And this is a time where we're seeing literally across the board, myself, the family, Rav Efraim, the team, everybody's having, Baruch Hashem, big tests, and also big successes along the way. And one of the things that brings on a lot of attention from the Yetzer Hara, a lot of attention from the Satan that really wants to fight you, is when you do kiruv, when you help people do Teshuvah, and even more so when you help people do Teshuvah by helping them abandon heresy. Meaning there's different levels of Teshuvah, there's different types of people that have to do Teshuvah. Some people have to do Teshuvah for everything, where they pretty much don't keep any Torah, they don't keep Shabbat, they don't keep kashrut, they don't keep family purity, they don't keep anything. That's like a blank piece of paper that's unfortunately usually missing all of the information, and you just have to fill in the blanks. You have to help those people. And many times they're very interested because they don't really know anything. And you just got to fill in the blanks. And as soon as you fill in the blanks, you see that this person starts to blossom, starts to really become something very special. Helping those types of people is my favorite. Why? Because everything is new. Everything is new to them. Everything is wonderful. Everything is exciting. They're usually very emotional about it, and it's very exciting to help people like that. Sometimes they're converts, sometimes they're brand new to Judaism altogether, even though they've been Jewish their whole life. But in generally, there's some people that are like that are blank piece of paper. And those are usually not easy, but they're easier than others to help them do Teshuvah. Then there are others that simply have fallen for the Satan's trap, and have filled in the blanks with all types of heresy and idol worship, either that came from the missionaries of Christianity, or came from the atheists, or came from the scientists / atheists, all of the different types of people that think that they know better than God, or people that have created a new God, and they created a new religion, whatever you want to call it. And those types of people, you have to really erase some of the information, correct some of it. You have something to work with, but you have a lot more work to do. Now, there are others that are perhaps more difficult than any of them, and those are the ones that are off the derech, meaning they used to be religious. They used to be religious, and then they read something, they saw something, they experienced something that really threw their life upside down, whether it was a bad rabbi, or a bad marriage, or a bad decision, whatever it was, that got them to not only abandon the Torah and the mitzvot, but got them to simply go completely the opposite way, completely secular. He used to be a Chassid with peyot, now he lives in Tel Aviv with a bunch of guys, and pretty much he's acting as if he's a bachelor, even though he's got a wife and 6 kids. So unfortunately, these things happen also. Those are very difficult people to deal with, very, very difficult to deal with, because they feel like they know. They feel like they know, they feel like they saw, and usually they don't know and they didn't see. Now, those first 3 cases are ones we've dealt with, and ones, Baruch Hashem, we've succeeded with. And there is one that is, I believe, the most ignored problem in the world today, and in fact, the most difficult, which is the 4th case. The 4th case is helping the religious heretics. Religious heretics, that means people that they wake up in the morning and they go to synagogue. The men put on their tefillin. They put on their kippah. Some have a beard, some don't have a beard. The women are generally modest. More or less, at least they believe they are. In many cases they are. Some cases, a little work needs to be done to improve that modesty. But nonetheless, they're living a frum life. They're living a frum life, and in fact, they're living a life which they believe is Chassidut. Meaning it's not only a frum life, it's something that, according to the definition, it's supposed to be above and beyond the traditional frum. Chassid means you do above and beyond what you're obligated to do. You're even better, you're even more committed to HaShem than someone that is just doing the standard. Which again, it's not an obligation to be a Chassid, but certainly it's praiseworthy. Those are the most difficult cases. Why would that be the most difficult case? Because while there are some of the greatest people on planet Earth and throughout all of history that we're going to learn about, that were Chassidim, that were the teachers, that were the students, that were part of Klal Yisrael, unfortunately, Rabotai Yekarim, there are some that are in the world of Chassidut. For all intents and purposes, they live a life that looks like it's Chassidut for the people who don't really know what Chassidut is. But their ideology and belief system is as far away from Chassidut as you can possibly be. In fact, their ideology is 100% heretical, meaning they are in a worse category than the vast majority of the Jewish world. Because even somebody that's a blank piece of paper who doesn't know anything could have many different excuses of why he doesn't know. He grew up in a kibbutz, he never learned anything, he doesn't really even know the basics of the Torah, where the parashot are, what's the first parasha, what's the last parasha. He doesn't really know what you're supposed to do, before you eat, after you eat, doesn't know anything. He has many excuses for why he is the way he is. But the one that lives a life that more or less thinks he's a Chassid, in fact even teaches what he thinks is Chassidut, that person, when he has heretical beliefs, and he is in a position where, according to the Rambam, he cannot be counted in a minyan, he is in a very, very troubling situation. And the biggest reason why is because when you tell him or her that their beliefs are heretical, when you tell him or her that according to the Torah, they are part of the enemies of God rather than the servants of God, they look at you as if you are an alien. And then they rationalize. In some cases, they take the rebuke and they investigate, and Baruch HaShem, they realize that, yes, perhaps they have to change. But in many cases, they look at you as if, wait a minute, oh, now I know why you're saying that. You're a mitnaged. You are part of the long-standing machloket between the Chassidut and the Litvaks, the Litaim, the Litvish. You are part of that machloket. You're just continuing what the enemies of the Baal Shem Tov, the enemies of the Magid Mimezrich, the enemies of all of the great Chassidim, the Tzemach Tzedek of Lubavitch, and all of the great ones. You're just continuing that battle. Oh, now we understand. You're the enemy. Meaning, instead of you being someone that's trying to help them, you've now turned into the enemy. Now, how could this be? How could it be that you go out there and try to help people, and they call you the enemy? Now, of course, if you are the enemy, then certainly they're right. But if you're not, how could you be so far away from where they are? How could that be? Rabotai Yekarim, Baruch Hashem, over the last decade, we've learned a lot of Torah together. We've learned the foundations of each parasha. We've learned many things in regards to the sages. We've learned many things in regards to the Mussar. Where's the foundation of Mussar? Whether it's Pirkei Avot or it's the Ashkafa, all types of things. And from time to time, we've also brought teachings from across all spectrums of the Torah, whether it be the simple pshat meaning that you find from Rashi and the rest of the commentators, the basics of the halacha, or you go even into the midrash and give you all types of wonderful stories, and even at times we've delved into the mystical and supernatural. Perhaps some of the most favorite, shurim people have enjoyed have been the ones that have had the mystical and the supernatural. And even once in a while, we've delved into Chassidut. Now, so long as we've agreed with what the mainstream have said, generally, we've been loved by the public as well as their rabbis. But the moment that we started saying things that the sages teach, that Moshe Rabbeinu taught us, that all of Gedolei Yisrael taught, but it conflicted with what the mainstream teachings has become, then the people continue to love, but as soon as they told their rabbis, some of the rabbis didn't like. And then you find out that usually those rabbis that didn't like have a common denominator. And that common denominator is that they were part of those group of Chassidim that have a heretical ideology. An ideology that denies the 13 principles of faith, an ideology that denies reward and punishment, an ideology that, according to all halacha, including their own rabbis, is problematic. And any time we would try to discuss it, again, the common response would be, you are not a Chassid, and therefore you don't understand. So, this has been perhaps one of the most frustrating things to deal with, but anytime somebody tells me that I am not something and I don't know anything, generally speaking, I'm not really overly concerned because I'm not really basing any of the teachings on my knowledge. I learned with one of Gedolei Yisrael. I learned with a giant Talmid Chacham that learned Chassidut, that learned the Shas many, many times, Baruch Hashem, has written over 50 books, has learned the Zohar, has learned Shulchan Aruch countless times. I'm learning with people that, Baruch Hashem, are giants in Torah, so I don't have to worry about my little bit of knowledge. I have to, obviously, rely on much, much greater knowledge than I could ever consume. So when they say, I don't know, okay, fine, I don't know, but you still can't tell me that he and all of these giant chachamim, they also don't know. And you can't tell me that the Rambam doesn't know, and the Rabbeinu Yonah doesn't know, and the Chovot Levavot doesn't know, and Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know, and Onkelos doesn't know, and Chazon Ovadia doesn't know, and nobody knows except you. So then you start saying, wait a minute, hold on a second. Why are you saying we don't know? Why do you assume we don't know? Oh, because you're not a Chassid. How do you know I'm not a Chassid? Is there like a stamp that I'm supposed to have on my shirt that says Chassid? If not, if that is, then maybe I have it under. How do you know I don't? On the other hand, whether I'm a Chassid or I'm not a Chassid, why do I need to be a Chassid in order to know how to read? Why do I need to be a Chassid in order to know what the basics of the Torah? I mean, the world of Judaism is much bigger than Chassidut. But unfortunately, these types of debates would be really to no avail. They would get nowhere. Because there's a mentality out there that Chassidut has an explanation for everything. It has an explanation for everything. And by everything, I mean all of the heretical statements made by the Manis Friedman Company and the others that have been, unfortunately, very, very popular in the world of the English speakers and unfortunately are infecting the Hebrew-speaking world today. And one of the things that you're seeing is that it's infecting the masses and changing people's ideology, where all of a sudden people start believing the nonsense that God actually needs anything, even though it is literally contrary to the Torah. Now, we're not going to repeat that whole argument again. We've done it enough, and BeEzrat Hashem, we're working on a few things that BeEzrat Hashem will come out very soon, including a letter from our Bet Din, also signed by the chief Dayan in Israel and in the world today, alongside some other great Chachamim, that will show exactly what Dat Torah is about the heresy of Manis Friedman and his followers. But nonetheless, we have to address the bigger problem, which is this whole concept of Chassidut. What is Chassidut? What is it? Now, if I were to tell you what I thought, based on my ideas, you shouldn't accept it. Why? Well, I'm not one of the founders of Chassidut. I'm not one of the forefathers of Chassidut. But if I were to tell you what the Chassidim that founded Chassidut taught, accepted as their foundation, then it would behoove you to accept every word. And in fact, there is no other way. Because without these foundational teachings, there is no Chassidut. Now, of course, everyone knows that Chassidut did not start 400 years ago with the Baal Shem Tov. Chassidut is already something that the Torah itself speaks about. It's just, simply put, it is doing more than the basic minimum obligation, which the basic minimum, if one were to achieve it, they would become a tzaddik, because the basic minimum in Judaism is still an enormous amount of servitude of your Creator. But needless to say, there are some that want to do even more. They love Hashem, they want to show their love of Hashem and their appreciation of Hashem and their servitude of Hashem, and they do even more. And therefore, from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's mentioned in the Mishnah, in the Gemara, and of course throughout all the last couple of millennia, it's discussed all of the different great Chachamim that have done above and beyond the requirement and have certainly achieved the highest levels of Chassidut. But approximately, I would say 350 years ago, Chassidut was rebranded, if you will, where you had the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael ben Eliezer, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, bring Chassidut to the forefront of Judaism in such a fashion that it was the cure before the ailment that was about to hit the Jewish world. Because about 100 years after the Baal Shem Tov came to the world, maybe a little bit more than that, unfortunately the Enlightenment movement came to the world as well. Reform came to the world. The Zionists came to the world. All of the heretical teachings of the Enlightenment movement came to the world and infected Judaism, especially European Judaism, with such heresy that you needed to reawaken the public, reawaken the Jewish world, but in a different way than you did before. Because they just left traditional Judaism. They just left the foundational teachings we've had for the last few thousand years, and bringing them back with the same tools apparently wasn't working with some of them. And therefore Chassidut was utilized, and still is today, to bring the heart out of every Jew and take it and put it into the Torah in a time where unfortunately many people have turned into robots, where they may or may not be practicing the mitzvot, but in a very heartless fashion. So now, Rabotai, the Talmud Yerushalmi tells us that any time you learn about a Chacham or teaching of a Chacham, you should imagine that Chacham standing right next to you and watching everything you say, making sure that what you're saying in his name is true, is correct, is how he would say it, how he would do it. Now, in order to do that, one has to know who the Chacham is. Needs to have some type of a mental visual, some type of image in their mind, not necessarily whether it's a beard or it's a hat, but rather the neshama of this Chacham has to be in your mind in order for you to truly appreciate whose wisdom you're teaching. Now, Chassidut started, as I said, with the Baal Shem Tov. But the Baal Shem Tov didn't live forever. The Baal Shem Tov knew that in order for his teachings to continue flourishing and to impact the entire Jewish world, he needs to have Chassidim. He needs to have loyal followers that will be also teachers. In one of the places that he came to, where he started in a place that today is known as Ukraine, he went to a certain place where he saw that there's a Chacham over there by the name of Rabbi Dov Ber, later known as the Magid of Mezrich. Rabbi Dov Ber, the Magid of Mezrich, was paralyzed, was not able to walk, but was very committed to the Torah. And the Baal Shem Tov saw, apparently through Ruach HaKodesh, the spark of his neshama, that he is the perfect teacher that's required for the Baal Shem Tov's Torah to continue to flourish. The problem was the Magid Mezrich wasn't exactly on the same page. One day, the Baal Shem Tov invites the Magid of Mezrich to the Bet Midrash to come see him. And he comes, and the Baal Shem Tov asks the Magid, you see here, there's a Sefer. This Sefer is the Etz Chaim. Etz Chaim is the teachings that Rabbi Chaim Vital wrote in the name of his Rav, the Arizal. This is like the Talmud of the Kabbalah. You know, we have the Talmud. We have for the Mishnah, for the oral Torah. The Talmud of the Kabbalah is Etz Chaim, Sefer Etz Chaim. extraordinarily deep sefer, only for the few among us that have learned all of the basics, all of the foundationals, have literally gotten to the point where you have gotten to a established state enough where you have the permission to even learn the Etz Chaim, because otherwise you're simply wasting time. You're not going to understand anything. And the Etz Chaim is in the hand of the Baal Shem Tov, and he hands it to the Magid of Mezrich, Rabbi Dov Ber. He says, tell me what it says over there. Explain to me the pshat, the simple meaning of what it says. Rabbi Dov Ber looks at it for a few moments, analyzes it just like the Chachamim do. They don't just shoot from the sleeve. Analyze it, takes his time, and then he tells the Baal Shem Tov what the pshat meaning of that teaching was. The Baal Shem Tov looks at him and says, seems like you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, well perhaps let me look at it again. Let me review it again, and I'll tell you, well, maybe I made a mistake. He looks at it for a little longer, reviews every word, and then he goes back to the Baal Shem Tov. He goes, for the Rav, I'm sorry to tell you, but what I said is that is what the meaning is. The pshat over here is what I said. Perhaps the rabbi understands something differently, and you can teach me and show me why I'm wrong, but this is what I understand here. The Baal Shem Tov tells the Magid Mezrich, stand up. Stand up. You're talking about a person that's about to receive a different level of Torah. The Baal Shem Tov starts reading out loud what is written in the Etz Chaim, which also included certain names of certain malachim. And as the Baal Shem Tov reads this Torah, fire of heaven comes into the room and encompasses them, surrounds them. And then the angels, as he says the names of the angels, come down and join them. This type of Torah is not the type of Torah the Magid Mezrich ever saw before. After teaching him this, the Baal Shem Tov says to him, of course what you said, the pshat that you said was correct, but it was missing the fire. It was missing the heart. It was missing the soul of the Torah. You were teaching it in such a fashion where, 1 + 1 is 2, and that's it. We're missing the fire of Torah, the excitement of Torah. And that's what I want to teach you. I want to teach you this Chassidut. Chassidut is the Torah of the heart. It's taking the heart of the Jew and bringing it into the Torah. Not just reading things superficially. Now, of course, there were some that saw the dedication that the Baal Shem Tov had in teaching the Magid Mezrich and said, Kvod Harav, why are you spending so much time with him? I mean, he's paralyzed. Where can he possibly go with your teachings? You're making it as if he's going to be the one that teaches the world your teachings. And the Baal Shem Tov said, he may be paralyzed with his legs, but he will get the rest of the world to follow him. And yes, he will continue my teachings. And that's exactly how it was. The Magid Mezrich continued the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, and from him, the different parts of Chassidut broke off into the world. Of course, you have the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Menachem of Breslev. He took on part of the Chassidut. But you also had the first Talmidim, the key Talmidim of the Magid Mezrich, were Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk and his brother Rabbi Zusha of Anipoli. Now, Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk and Rabbi Zusha, there are literally no end to the stories about them. And each one of the stories, similar to the stories of the Baal Shem Tov, they're full of miracles, they're full of wonders, they're full of righteousness, they're full of things that simply, if you don't have the Jewish heart, the Jewish spark within you, it's impossible for you to accept them at face value. This what was happening at that same time. You see, the Enlightenment movement, the movement of the heretics, the movement of the atheists, the movement of the communists that came into the world, that infected the Jewish world and the world at large, what it was trying to do, and till this day, is removing the supernatural, removing the mystical, saying that you have to only look at things from a rational point of view, a point of view that is easy to digest, things that you can prove, and in so many words, removing half of the Torah from itself. Because if you look at the Torah from the first page until the last page, you're going to find miracles and supernatural in every single sentence. There is nothing natural about it. Everything is supernatural. And that's what the Ramban writes in Parashat Bo. Anyone that says that there's no miracles, or that every single thing that happens in the world is not a miracle, has no share of the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Everything is a miracle. Everything is supernatural. The fact that you got used to it, the fact that you're acclimated to a blue sky, even though it has no color, to blue water, even though it has no color, to all of the different extraordinary things that are part of your day-to-day life, you've become acclimated to it. It doesn't mean that it's not supernatural. And of course, Rabotai Karim, when a person is told stories of people changing nature, changing what is already supernatural, what is already something that you shouldn't expect, and changing that even further, whether it's the fires in the room and angels coming and people flying or all types of things happening, if a person doesn't have that Jewish spark, if that person doesn't have that faith in the world of Torah, in these great tzaddikim, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for them it's impossible to accept. Now I must admit, as I've said in previous years, when I first started learning Torah, I was one of those, where I had no problem accepting the Torah, what I read. If you told me Hashem created everything from nothing, I had no problem accepting it. You told me that Hashem split the sea, I had no problem. You told me that all types of things happened at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu that were supernatural, I had no problem. But once you told me that these similar things, and more even, happened many years after Moshe Rabbeinu, where supernatural things were done by what seems like ordinary men, that's when I had a problem. It didn't make sense to me. If you told me Moses flew in the air, I had no problem. Told me Avraham Avinu walked through fire, I had no problem. But if you told me that Rabbi Chaim Volozhin is teaching us the Torah of the Gaon Rav Vilna, and he's saying in the name of his rabbi that the Gaon Rav Vilna had angels knock on his door every day, begging him to learn Torah from him, and he's saying no. All of a sudden I'm confused. Wait a minute. Why are they going to him? Why aren't they coming to me? I need it. Aside from that, why is he saying no? I'm confused. And only after delving further and further into the Torah do you start finding yourself surrounded by miracles, where you realize that this is not one story, this is not one rabbi, this is not one place, it's literally everywhere. And even the things you thought you knew about the Torah itself are nothing in comparison to the infinite amount of other details you did not know that are much more significant, much more supernatural. And you realize that without the supernatural, without the mystical, without the clarification that everything is simply supernatural, and there is nothing that's beyond the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and if he puts the Shekhinah on one of his righteous servants, he literally gives them the ability to do things that are not things that regular people do. And you start realizing that the supernatural is standard among the Jewish people. Now, the stories of Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk are full of that. But before we get into what he taught, we have to first understand who he is, what he stands for. Since we understand that the Rebbe Elimelech and his brother Rabbi Zusha, they were third generation of Chassidut. You have the Baal Shem Tov, Magid Mezrich, and then Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk and his brother Rabbi Zusha. So we're talking about, this is the foundation, these are the forefathers of Chassidut. And although there is not an enormous amount of writings from Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk, there's the Noam Elimelech, which is a significant sefer going over the different parts of the Torah, you also have these shorter writings that when they were discovered, they were also added to the foundation of Chassidut. One of them is the one that this entire series is based on. It's called Tzetel Katan. Tzetel Katan is a very short teachings by Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk that means a short note or a small note. But this small note is not so small after all. In fact, once a person reads it, studies it, understands the magnitude of it, they'll realize that there is nothing small about it. In fact, it's already a big deal that we got this far. Tzetel Katan and the teachings of Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk are considered by all Chassidim, without exception, as the foundational teachings, foundational principles of Chassidut. Now, Chassidut is not something that somebody could just simply claim to be, just because they wear certain clothing, they wear shtreimel, they have a bekeshe. That doesn't make you a Chassid. That just means you own certain types of clothing. Chassidut is a lifestyle. Chassidut is a way that you serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the more one learns about the Chassidim, the more they'll understand which path they're really on. And really, while this series is going to address at first all of those people that say, oh, we don't understand Chassidut, it's going to address that. But more importantly, it's going to help everyone understand what is Chassidut. What is it? What do I need to believe? What do I need to do? By the end of this series, some will be disappointed. Some will be excited. But everyone will know exactly where they stand when it comes to being on the path of Chassidut or not. Because this, Rabotai Karim, is what Chassidut is. Now, today, there's a lot of confusion about what Chassidut is. Some have turned Chassidut into dancing. They dance around, they dance in the middle of the street, they dance in a synagogue, they dance everywhere, and they believe that this is Chassidut. Some have turned Chassidut into drinking. They're simply alcoholics that use Chassidut as the excuse for their drinking habits. They have the different names for it, the verbreng, or whatever other names they'll use, or ways that they'll drink. And again, you're allowed to drink at certain times, at certain places, at certain quantities. But when your entire belief system has turned into that, you are as far from being a Chassid as a non-Jew is from being a Jew. Chassidut is not about dancing. Chassidut is not about drinking. And certainly Chassidut is not about this new world philosophy that has infiltrated the Jewish world today, where they're starting to teach you all types of philosophical ideas that remove the foundational principles of the Torah, especially the ones that have to do with reward and punishment. And they teach you these ideas, and they say this is all part of Chassidut. Because even the great Chassidim, like the Rabbi Nachman of Breslev, said himself on his own writings, on his own Likutei Maharan, on his life's work, on what the entire world of Breslev stands on, and many other parts of Chassidut stand on. Rabbi Nachman of Breslev said, you can bend any of my teachings if you'd like, as much as you want, as long as you don't bend even one psak in the Shulchan Aruch. Meaning, you want to manipulate my teachings of Chassidut, say this, change that, do what you want, as long as whatever you're doing is not going to change the Jewish book of laws that all of Am Yisrael accept, which is the Shulchan Aruch. The moment you violate the Shulchan Aruch, you're not only not following Chassidut, you're not following Judaism. And this, Rabotai, is one of the most important things that a person needs to know. In order to be a Chassid, the minimum of minimum is that you have to be a Jew that follows the entire Shulchan Aruch, that follows all of the foundational principles of our Torah. Without that, your Chassidut does not even begin. Now, some of the great Chassidim that you'll hear about throughout history are the different Admorim we had. You had the Admor of Sochotchov, the Admor of Gur, Rabbi Meir Alter of Gur, the Admor of Kotzk. All of these great tzaddikim were in a circle because the Admor of Kotzk was actually the rabbi of both of them. He was the Admor of Gur was one of his main talmidim, and Admor of Sochotchov was his son-in-law. Now, the Admor of Kotzk, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotzk, was a Ish Kodesh, genius, Gaon, with an extreme midah of emet, to such an extent that he literally could not tolerate even an ounce of sheker in anything. One time, the Admor of Sochshov spoke about his father-in-law. And he says, I merited to learn from my father-in-law, the Admor of Kotzk, but I only merited, he was a genius himself, to understand only a little bit of his huge amount of Torah that he had. But with all of that Torah, he had an enormous amount of emet. And that's why when you have some of the stories about the Admor of Kotzk without knowing how much of a righteous and a genius he was, it doesn't always add up. So you need to know a little bit more of both. On one end, genius, Gaon. Different parts of Chassidut in the world today exist because of him. On the other end, you're also going to hear stories of different interactions he had with his Talmidim. One time, one of his Chassidim came to him and showed him under his shirt that he's wearing a sack in order to show to the Rebbe that he is mourning the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. But the Admor of Kotzk knew this Talmid and knew that this is not 100% true and responded with a rebuke, saying to him, I see that the Yetzer Hara has caught you good this time. He put you in a sack. Meaning he didn't get excited by people's craziness, by people's fake zealousness, where unfortunately that's not a new thing today. It's always been. People try to portray that they're zealous, that they're servants of HaShem, because, with their exterior, with the way that they look, the way they dress, certain words they say. But of course, a Rebbe always knows who's really a Chassid and who's a faker. Another time, the Admor of Kotzk came into his Bet Midrash and he saw all of these Chassidim are sitting there and he started rebuking all of them. What are you doing all here? All you do here is just you come, you eat, you drink. What kind of Chassidim are you? You're Chassidim. And he started literally rebuking them, roaring at them, to the point where they all got so scared, they all ran out except one guy. The Admor came to him and goes, and you? You're a Chassid, you? And the little Chassid said, yes, Rabbi. You a Chassid? He said, yes. I'm sorry, Rabbi, but the Gemara in Masechet Nida, page 17a, says somebody that cuts their nails and throws them on the floor is a Rasha. He's a wicked person. Why? Because there is a mystical nature to it. There's a skula here that if a pregnant woman walks over that nail, she could actually have a miscarriage. So he cares less about anybody, he just throws it out, he could hurt somebody. He's a Rasha. But somebody that takes his nails and buries them, he's a tzaddik, because he doesn't want anybody to get hurt by them. But someone that takes his nails and burns them, he's a Chassid. I burn my nails, Rabbi. The Admor of Kotzk smiled at the young Chassid and said, okay, you're the only one then. You're the only Chassid then. The question is, Rabotai Karim, why does that make somebody a Chassid? That he burns the nails? Is that all you need? You don't need to spend 10,000 on a hat. You don't need to spend a few thousand on a jacket. You don't need to grow a beard to be a Chassid. That's it. You just need to burn your nails? No. It takes obviously a lot more than that. But the question is still, why is burning the nails part of Chassidut? Obviously, it's above and beyond. You can't just throw your nails on the floor. That's understandable because it's part of our Gemara, part of our understanding that this has a negative effect on the world. It could actually harm somebody. So throwing it out in the garbage, flushing it in the toilet, certainly, these are things that are good things to do. But burning them makes somebody a Chassid. Why? Before we get to that, we also have to know that the Admor of Kotzk was such a Ish Kodesh with Emet, that one of his famous votes was that the teachings that we've all heard at least once a year on Tisha B'Av, where the Gemara in Masechet Bava Metzia, page 59a, says that after the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, all of the gates of heaven were closed, except the gate of tears. That's not closed. And the Admo of Kotzk asked the genius question. Well, if they're never closed, then why are there gates? It's a simple question, and you're thinking to yourself right now, why didn't I think of it? If they're always open, then why do you even have gates? I mean, if somebody has an open door policy in his house, where pretty much you can just go in and out whenever you want, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, why even have a door? So that Momitz Kotzk asked that about Shemaim. Why have a door if it's always open? The question is genius. The answer is even more. The Admo of Kotzk says it's because not all of the tears are real tears. There are some tears of liars. There are some fake tears. Tears where somebody cries, but it's a fake crier. They're crying about nonsense. They're crying fake cry. They're not really crying for HaShem. They're not really crying for something significant. And for those fake tears, the gates close for them. The gates are always open for real tears, not fake tears. Don't think that just because you cry, you're going to fool your Creator. So, the depth of every single statement that the Admorim said went into the heart of man. And the more you learn the Torah of Chassidut, the more you understand really the flaws within man and the potential. Now, the question still is, what is the need for it? Why do you need Chassidut? Why do you need Chassidut? Isn't the standard following the Torah, doing the mitzvot enough? Well, it is enough. You wake up in the morning, say thank you to HaShem for giving you another day. You relieve yourself, say thank you to HaShem for giving me a body that works. You eat, say thank you to HaShem for giving me food before and after you eat. You pray to HaShem 3 times a day at least if you're a man, once a day at least if you're a woman. Your entire week is based on Shabbat. Everything is always looking and at Shabbat. How far is Shabbat from us? Shabbat is 5 days away, 4 days away, 3 days away. Shabbat is almost here. Your whole life is about Judaism. Your whole life is about Torah. Every second, if you're a frum Jew, every second of your day it's connected to some type of mitzvah or another. So why do you need Chassidut? Well, Chassidut can certainly help a person bring out their heart and bring out their feelings in a certain tasks that they've become accustomed to the point where they've become robotic. They've become so accustomed to their prayers that we're all guilty of it, that sometimes you're praying and you're just going through the motion. You're just saying the words, but you're not reading into it. You're not even feeling it. Sometimes a person can get so far away from the goal that they're literally looking forward to finishing the prayer. And if I were to tell you, listen, you have a meeting set up with the one person that can change your life. Let's say you're in the business world, you're looking for a contract, you're looking for a deal, you're looking for an investment. And I tell you, listen, I have a guy that's the perfect investor for you. It's the guy that you've always dreamed about getting an investment from him. He is interested in what you do. He's knowledgeable in what you do, and he's willing to give you some time. for you to present your opportunity. Now, you're, of course, going to be as excited as can be. This is no different than winning the lotto. You're going to prepare for this. You're going to think about this. You're going to recite your speech, practice it. And at the moment of truth, when you're in front of this potential life changer, you're going to want as much time as possible. You're not even going to waste a minute drinking the coffee that he offers you or water. All of a sudden, you're not thirsty, even though literally your throat is so dry, you're thinking that maybe of turning it into a desert. But you don't want to waste the time that you have drinking a cup of water, drinking a coffee. You want to present your pitch. You want to present your idea. You want to get this investor. You want to get this job. So you start talking. You talk and you talk. And you look forward for a response. And the worst thing that could ever happen to you at that moment is if they tell you, I'm sorry, but I have to cut this meeting short. I have something else to do that's more important. I have something else that's priority. So we have to cut this short. The worst thing that could happen, your whole world will feel like it's collapsing, especially if you've prepared for this thing for days in and days out. This was your life's goal, to finally get this meeting. You're in front of this person. You're telling them everything. Some things are coming out exactly like you planned. Other things are the opposite of what you planned. But you keep going and you're excited about it. And you pick up everything that you broke and you keep doing whatever you can. But the worst thing that could happen is if he tells you, I'm sorry, I got to go now. And the meeting is abruptly ended. Because even if he would have continued talking to you about something that's not even relevant, if he would have started telling you about his life story, how he got so successful, how he was put in the position that he's in, if he started telling you about his kids, if he would have started telling you about his problems, you would enjoy every minute of it. In fact, if he would have started telling you know what, you want to go play some tennis together, play some golf, walk around, have a coffee, maybe we'll have some lunch, I'll introduce you to my friends, my employees, you'd love every minute of it. If he told you, listen, why don't we spend the whole day together? You'll go, you'll be my buddy. You'll be my driver. I'll take you to all my meetings. You won't say anything, but you can listen to everything else. There's nothing in the world you wouldn't love more than that. Why? Because you're getting an opportunity to be next to the person that could be the changer of everything. Now, as great as this person may be, as rich as this person can be, as knowledgeable as this person can be, they are less than nothing. Less than nothing when you compare them to their creator, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the King of Kings, Ishtabach Shemo La'ad. En od milvado, there's nothing else but him. It's not that there's no one like him. That's an obvious. But there's nothing else but him. Nothing else. He gives us an opportunity to speak to him as often as we want. And since we get so busy chasing our dreams and fulfilling our obligations, he tasked upon us to pray to him at least 3 times a day. Talk to your Creator 3 times. He's the one that can change everything. He's the one that decides everything. He's the one that puts you in the predicament that you're in, and he's the only one that can take you out. Nothing will work for you or against you without it being the will of HaShem. And unfortunately, because we get so wrapped up in our own doings, in our own convincing of ourselves that we are our creator, that we are our decision maker, that we are in charge, we convince ourselves that we are the masters of our destiny, to such an extent that we forget God, that we forget that He is the one and only that decides what the outcome would be. The only thing that's in our hands is what we'll try to do, our effort, how we're going to use our time. The outcome is never in our hands. The outcome is never in the hands of man. Man is limited. Man is not something that could ever become a god. That's why Christianity is idol worship. They've humanized God. They've made the infinite, unlimited, into something measly, and something that comes from a putrid seed and eventually eaten by maggots. Literally, you've taken everything and turned it into nothing. So now, when a person convinces themselves that either God is human, or they've humanized God, or they have deified themselves, thinking to themselves that they are in charge of everything, that it's very, very simple for them to start hating prayer, because they start looking at prayer as if it's wasting time. They don't really believe that God's listening to their prayer. They don't really believe that God is there when they're saying their Shema Yisrael, their Shema Yisrael. They believe that God is where they need to be, which is at their job, at their assignment, at their desk, at their trip, wherever it is. It cannot be that He's here while I'm praying. So although God is inviting you to pray to Him, talk to Him for as long as you want, a person could pray so many times to the point where they forget what they're even doing. It becomes robotic to the point that they forget that they're praying to the one who has all the answers, to the one that our new song said, the one who lives forever, to the one and only God of Israel. We forget. We forget that this is where the answers are. We forget that this is where the questions are. We forget. And unfortunately, when a person forgets that about prayer, their prayer becomes something of a burden. And it becomes even worse when they forget about the purpose behind the rest of the mitzvot, behind why we eat kosher, behind why we dress modest, behind why we keep Shabbat, and worst of all, behind why we all have to, absolutely have to, make time for learning Torah every single day. Without learning Torah, a Jew cannot know how to be a Jew. A Jew cannot feel like a Jew. This, Rabotai Karim, is one of the things that Chassidut helped the world with, to bring back that heart into this busy world we've made for ourselves. Now, of course, not everybody needs it. The more you learn Torah, the more you learn about the mitzvot, the more passionate you become about them, and the more heart you have doing them. And for some people, this works. Most people, it works. While others need a little extra. Others need a little extra. And the teachings of Chassidut was certainly the perfect recipe for them. Now, Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk was Rebbe Elimelech Weizenblum of Lizhensk, was one of the greatest Hasidic masters of the 18th century. He lived at a time when the Hasidic movement was beginning to flourish and spread across Eastern Europe. He and his brother Rabbi Zusha Vanipoli were among the closest students of Rabbi Dov Ber, the Magid Mimezrich, who was the chief disciple of the Baal Shem Tov. After the Magid Mimezrich's passing, Rebbe Elimelech moved to the town of Lizhensk, Poland, where he attracted a large following of Chassidim and devoted himself to teaching and helping the community. Now, many that saw and witnessed the life, the teachings, and the miracles and the wonders that came through the hand of Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk simply became not only his Chassidim, but also the teachers that continued teachings as teachings and continued reminding everyone why you should listen to these teachings. He was also called the second Baal Shem Tov, because the wonders that he did, in many cases, were significant even at the time of the Tanaim, which preceded him by nearly 1,600 years, 1,800 years. Now, some of these stories, Rabotai, are so extraordinary that if it wasn't for eyewitnesses, it would be impossible to believe. In one story, Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk is told that one of his Chassidim saw the holiness of the rabbi and knew that the rabbi could be the one messenger from HaShem that could help him with a problem that no doctor in the world was able to deal with. This Chassid had a young daughter, was almost 20 years old, but she stopped growing when she was only 2 years old. Meaning she was a 20-year-old woman in the body of a 2-year-old kid. She just stopped growing. Now this disease is known in the world today, but 200 years ago, 250 years ago, nobody knew what to do with this. And this Chassid decided that he's going to plead with the Rebbe to please help him. And one day he found his way into the house of Rebbe Elimelech when the Rebbe Elimelech was not there, went into the bedroom and placed his young daughter on the bed, which is an absolute no-no. The bed of the rabbi is Kodesh Kodeshim. As we know from different Chachamim, their sleep of the tzaddikim may not be much, but there's an enormous amount of benefit to it. Where one time Rabbi Chaim Vital, the main Talmid of the Arizal, walked into the house where he saw that his Rebbe was sleeping for the few hours that he would sleep during the day, and he heard that the rabbi, the Arizal, was speaking, was murmuring something. So he came closer and closer to the rabbi. He wanted to hear what the rabbi is saying. As he got closer and closer, his ear closer to the mouth of the Arizal woke up. Huh? What are you doing here? Oh no, Rabbi, I'm sorry. I just wanted to hear what the rabbi was saying. And Arizal says to him, I was learning Torah in Shemaim, and even if I would give you a lecture for over 80 years straight, day and night, it would not be enough to teach you what I learned in just these last few moments that I fell asleep. Why? Because when you are in the world of neshamot, in the upper world, there's no restrictions and limitations of the body, of this lowly body that we have, this limitations that we have. So you don't need to be subject to the rules of this body, the rules of time and space. So the amount of Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can give a person literally can envelope that neshama, an enormous amount of Torah can envelope that neshama in mere seconds. And that's what the Arizal was telling his student. So when Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk came into his house and saw that there's a little baby, or what looked like a little baby, on his bed, he was upset. Hey, Chatzuf, who put you on my bed? The Chassid came out and pleaded with him on the floor. Please, I beg you, Rabbi, it was me, I'm sorry. I need you to help me, please. And the Rabbi saw that his Chassid is crying. He says, sure, what happened? He says, she won't grow. He goes, why not? What do you mean she won't? What's wrong with her? He goes, no, she's 20 years old, almost 20 years old, but she stopped growing when she was 2. Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk, witnessed by the Chassid, and thereby his mother came in shortly thereafter, seeing this, eyewitnesses to this. And of course, everybody else that knew them saw this after, where they see the outcome. Rebbe Elimelech tells them, okay, get her off the bed. And he takes her off the bed, and Rebbe Elimelech puts his holy hand over the head of this young woman that's in the body of a 2-year-old and tells her to stand. She couldn't stand also. She's troubled to move and stand, but she eventually gets herself to wobble on 2 legs. And Rebbe Elimelech puts his hand on her. He says, so, is this enough? More? More? And every time he says more, the child's body grows more and more. And as he's lifting his hand higher and higher, this child turns from being a 2-year-old body into a child, into a teenager, into a grown woman of 19 years old, to the point where the Chassid said, okay, enough, she's going to get too big now. And right in front of his eyes, there was no medicine, there was no potion, there was the holiness of the tzaddik. Whereas the Gemara tells us, the tzaddik says, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu fulfills. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has these tzaddikim, these righteous people, as his messengers in the world. There is representation in the world. He doesn't need them. But when they make their life completely dedicated to HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows his will through their words, through their statements, through their actions. The Rebbe Elimelech has stories like this, one after another, Rabotai. Another time where the Chassidim saw that the Rebbe that they had was not just an ordinary rabbi that will give a nice Dvar Torah here and there, inspire them, and then move on. There was always a line of people outside of his house, always a bunch of people waiting to speak to him, waiting to simply look at him, hear him say something. But there were also times where everything was off limit. You couldn't enter. One time there are many people waiting for the rabbi to accept people. They're all waiting, they're all talking, they're all hoping for something to change, but all of a sudden, they see 3 huge men. 3 men that were extremely big. Very, very tall. So tall that they all walked in very, very fast, crossed the line past everyone. Everybody had to make a way for them. They quickly went into the door, and all of them had to completely bend in order to be able to enter the house. That's how big they were. And all of them were that big. Of course, everyone is talking. Who are these people? Where do these giants come from? What do they want from the rabbi? And everyone is talking and everyone is waiting. And then everyone decides, okay, as soon as they come out, take a look at who they are, their faces. Maybe we can recognize them. So everybody is waiting quickly to see who's coming out. Is a rabbi from here? Is a rabbi from there? Does he look like this? Does he look like... Who are these people? And as they're waiting and waiting and waiting, soon enough the door opens and the three men quickly come out, and they go so fast that nobody gets a look at their face. And they simply just disappear. Now, of course, everyone is interested. Who are these important people? They wore different types of clothes. They certainly look different than everybody. Who are these people? And who are they? They could just walk in and out of the Rebbe's house and no one rejects them. No one tells them what to do. Soon enough, Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk came out and he saw the look on the people's faces, and he said, you're probably wondering who those three very important men were. Well, after seeing the decline in the generations and the way that people pray, I realized that many people lose their focus because the prayer is too long for them. So they may start with the right intention and excitement. When they learn, they start reading the Shachrit prayer, but within a few moments they lose themselves and they don't have kavanah when they pray. And I thought that perhaps I could take the highlights of the prayer that I've learned through endless amount of teachings from the Torah, from Kabbalah, from my rabbi, take the highlights and combine it in such a way that I could shorten the prayers to a much shorter format, and that way everyone can pray with kavanah because it's going to be that much shorter. And as I was about to start writing it, these three men came in and they told me, we are the Anshe Knesset Agdola. We are three members of the men of the Great Assembly from the time of the Bet HaMikdash. We are the ones that wrote the prayers in the Siddur. The Anshe Knesset Agdola were prophets that knew which gates of heaven open at specific times and which words need to be said in order to open each gate, which word was a key, which word was a lock. They didn't just write these prayers, they didn't just take different parts of Psalms and different parts of the Tanakh and just put it in different places because it sounds good. Literally everything was done through prophecy and Ruach HaKodesh. And they said to Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk, even though what you want to do is praiseworthy, it is not welcome in Shemaim because HaShem wants Am Yisrael to continue with that prayer because that prayer has the gates opened and closed at specific times when people pray with the minyan, even if the individual does not have kavanah. And therefore, in Shemaim, it was decreed for you not to do this. Don't write this new siddur that you want to do, but as a show of respect for you, you could write a different prayer that will be said before people start praying. And the Anshe Knesset Agdola was sent from Shemaim, from the world of truth, to speak to Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk face to face. So now, Rabotai, the Stories of Chassidut are always interesting. But we still haven't answered what makes a person a Chassid by simply burning their nails. Now, of course, there's a lot more to Chassidut than simply burning the nails. As you'll see from the Tzetel Katan, which is a short letter that Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk wrote that gives you guidance of how to serve HaShem like a Chassid. Different guidance, different advice of what you need to do. And the letter is full of extraordinary things that some things the average person can do. Other things even very high level people cannot do. He gives advice that could fit everyone. But unfortunately, not everyone could actually fit that guidance into their life. At least not on day one. At least not without a life worth of work. He tells us how to overcome stubbornness, how to break the natural inclination, how to fix personality traits, even if you're only a teenager, how to remove the negative form of embarrassment that you have, how to speak clearly and concisely, how to remove laziness and study with more excitement. A lot of things are in this letter, even though it's a very short letter. But the letter starts with how to utilize every minute of your time to serve HaShem. And in fact, the way that he describes it, I could assure you that no matter where you are in your life and how long you've been praying and learning Torah, it'll shock you that this is the beginning of Chassidut for Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk, as he says that every moment that you have that is not utilized to learning Torah, you should be thinking about dying on Kiddush Hashem by being burned. Literally, the teachings that he has from the beginning of this letter shocks your soul in such a fashion where you already realize that regardless of what path you thought you were on, surely your Chassidut and Chassidut in reality are two different worlds. Now let yourself not get discouraged. There are some things that we can do, and there are some things that we aspire to do. There are some things that we can do sometimes, there are some things we can do all the time. And there's some things we could aspire to do, hopefully one day. Either way, Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk teaching the foundation of Chassidut, we have to first understand what is the purpose of Chassidut. We understand it's to bring the heart out in your mitzvah, to bring your neshama to life when you're serving Hashem. But how is that relevant to cutting your nails? I could understand if you pray to Hashem with kavanah and you cry to Hashem about your problems. Sure, that's good. That's better than praying like a robot. I can see you learning a lot of Torah with excitement, with zeal. I can see that. Makes sense. I can see making sure that you eat kosher food that has the best ashgacha. I can see. But what is this thing about nails? Rabotai Karim, once we understand the nails, we can start understanding what Chassidut is really all about and its goal. The Gemara says, someone that cuts their nails and throws them on the floor is a wicked person because those nails could harm somebody. is a spiritual impurity connected to those nails, that if a pregnant woman passes over them, she could literally have a miscarriage. This is also a reason of why a woman should never go to a cemetery, ever, even if it's her own parents, chas v'shalom. She should never go to a cemetery. The Zohar Kadosh says that there are certain mezikim in the cemetery that could impact the woman in such a fashion that she would never be able to have children again. A woman should never go to a cemetery. A woman has certain things about her that make her more susceptible to certain problems that men are not susceptible to. Nails are one of them. And a person that throws nails irresponsibly could hurt a woman. And if a person understands this and says, okay, I'm not going to throw them on the floor, I'll throw them in the garbage, I'll bury them, the Gemara says that person is a righteous person, he's a tzaddik. And if a person goes the extra mile and says, listen, if I bury those nails, somebody could uncover them and still that could hurt the woman. Still that could hurt somebody. But if I burn them, then they're out of existence. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to burn them. And the Gemara says, that's a Chassid. Now, I can understand that it takes a little bit extra effort to burn them, but to really be called a Chassid is a big deal. Why? Why is it a Chassid? Well, the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, over 800 years ago, he says it, the Tosfot says it, in the name of the Aruch. The reason why he's a Chassid for burning the nails is that it's well known that when he burns parts of his body that he removed, whether it is his hair or his nails or skin that came off, if he burns it, he will be weakened by that, even though it's not part of his body anymore. Still, him burning those parts of his former parts of his body weakens him. It also smells terribly to him. But the fact that he still does it, knowing that it weakens him, knowing that it smells terrible to him, knowing that it's a burden to him, but he does it because he wants to go the extra effort in order to not harm anybody else, he's willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of others. That's a true Chassid. That's a true Chassid. This, Rabotai, is what Chassidut is all about. It's not just about showing everybody that you can afford to buy certain clothes, or that you can grow facial hair, or that you could wear a shtreimel, or that... No. It's not about even you reading a certain book and understanding it. It's a certain lifestyle where your life is about going the extra mile, the extra effort to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu by also helping his children even more so. And who is even better than someone that makes that extra effort to help HaKadosh Baruch Hu's children come back to him and do TeShuva? Now this, Rabotai, brings me to one of the saddest stories I've ever heard in my life, but unfortunately it's a story that must be told because it has everything to do with the situation that we are in today and everything to do with what Chassidut is about. The Rishon LeZion, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef Sheikhye, just said this in his shiur this Motzei Shabbat. And unfortunately, one of the difficulties of being the Rishon LeZion, a rabbi that teaches the public, deals with the public, the more you deal with the public, the more you are subject to the tragedies that are happening in the public. And of course, the highest position also gets the highest issues that are brought to their attention. And Rav Yitzchak Yosef said this story, and unfortunately this seems like a story that is happening on a regular basis. Years ago, his father, Rav Ovadia Yosef, alav shalom, who they just, as a side note, published the Chazon Ovadia, one of the latest books that Rav Ovadia Yosef wrote. There's a whole series of them in Hebrew. They just translated the section about Shabbat to English. And Baruch Hashem, I was just notified by one of my Talmidim about it. It was advertised somewhere. I figured I have to get one, even though I have the Hebrew. Need to see this beautiful work, what was done, what's different from that to the others. I bought it, and Baruch Hashem, it's fantastic. It's not exactly the same meaning that a lot of the footnotes that are in the Hebrew version are not in the English version, but nonetheless, this is certainly a perfect book to learn for every English speaker that wants to know how to live a Jewish life and know how to keep Shabbat. And we spoke to the owner of the store that's selling it, and Baruch Hashem, to help his new business as well as help the Torah of Rav Ovadia Yosef get publicized in the world. We got a special discount for all of the fans that put the code Rabbi Reuven and the store ashkenazibooks.com. You'll get a 10% discount. We don't get any money out of it. We just get the merits that there's more people learning Rav Ovadia's Sfarim. Now, Rav Ovadia Yosef, alav shalom, years ago, he told in a lecture, I heard it directly from him, that he had a dream about Mashiach. And he asked the Mashiach, Rabbeinu HaMashiach, why aren't you coming? We've been waiting for you. And the Mashiach told Rav Ovadia Yosef, it's because there are over 1 million children in Israel that do not know the Shema Yisrael. Now, some of you have heard me say this before. I've heard other rabbis say this. It was a very, very famous story told about Rav Ovadia Yosef. And better yet, some of us have heard these types of things, not just from this story, but throughout history, of how the degradation of the generations has gone to the point where many Jews today do not know the basics of Judaism. One of the things that my family and I love to do together on Shabbat, and any other time we have the ability, is read books together. And for the last couple of months, we've been reading books about Jewish history that are with fake characters, but it's real Jewish history. And there's a series called the Strasbourg Saga. And there's a whole series, I think it's maybe like 15 books or something like that. Originally it was written like 30 years ago, and then they continued it again in last few years. Anyway, it's a fantastic series of books, highly recommended. You'll learn a lot of history about it, but also it'll give you a real perspective of Jewish life over the last few hundred years. And in one of the books called the Morano Prince, it talks about the Spanish Inquisition. Now, we've learned about parts of the Spanish Inquisition. We've heard certain stories about it, but the way that the author puts it here really takes things to a different perspective, and it's mamash puts you in the moment of what happened to Klal Yisrael, getting burned at the stake, how they celebrate, how the church and the kings celebrated burning Jews alive. It's a horrible thing, and they literally celebrated it. And all spies and wicked people and conspiring. Anyway, one of the things you see is how the Jews that unfortunately did not choose to leave and abandon their wealth and decided to stay, made the wrong choice, because eventually either they were killed anyway when they were found out that they were still practicing Judaism and hiding, or they lost their olam haba because they became Christians. But worse yet, the next generation, even for the ones that succeeded to stay Jews but in hiding, the next couple of generations could not learn the Torah to the point where just 1 or 2 generations after the ones that made the decision to stay there in Spain, their grandkids, many of them did not even know they were Jewish until they became teenagers. And even after they found that they were Jewish, they had no idea what to do. They had no idea how to say Shema Yisrael. They had no idea what Shema Yisrael is. And the ignorance that they had was literally something extraordinary of how a Jew, on one end, is willing to die for the sake of their Jewishness, on the other end, does not even know the basic blessing for food, or the basic divine statements, which is the Shema Yisrael. HaShem Elokeinu, HaShem Echad. Hear, O Israel, HaShem our God, HaShem is one. They didn't know this. Now, with all intents and purposes, and everybody's, whether they thought it's going to be that bad, whatever decision that everybody made, you can't really judge somebody they're not in their shoes. I can tell you this. No one thought it was going to be as horrible as it ended up being. No one thought that it will last as long as it lasted. No one thought it was going to be as damaging as it was. It was literally a tragedy daily happening in the Jewish community with this entire monstrosity of a decree against the Jewish people. Now, if we were, chas v'shalom, at the time of the Spanish Inquisition, and you would tell me that you don't know how to say Shema Yisrael, I can't fault you for that. If you told me we were in a time of the Crusades, Imach Shimam v'zichram, the churches, soldiers that went from Jewish community to another, killing one after another, and you told me that you were so afraid of being Jewish that you did not teach your kids Shema Yisrael, I can't really fault you for that. If there are crusade monsters coming from town to town, these giants, and they're killing everybody, and you're so scared you don't want to teach your kids Shema Yisrael, I can't fault you for that. If you are at a time of the Holocaust, and you just saw 6 million of your brothers and sisters being murdered, and you're afraid to teach your 5-year-old kid Shema Yisrael, I can understand, because if you say it, the Nazi's going to kill you. I can understand. If you told me that in communist Russia, where the government convinced the Jewish community that their own brothers and sisters and parents are their enemies, and if they were to ever hear a Jewish prayer in the house, they should go and tell the KGB, the government, and thereby see to it that their own family and friends are arrested, and in some cases killed, quickly or slowly by being sent to Siberia, the Gehenom on this earth. And if you told me that because of that, the children in Russia, in different parts of Ukraine, in other parts of the world, they did not know the Shema Yisrael, I could say to you, I understand. Because they were constantly under threat. If you said the Shema Yisrael in Russia, you could die. If you said the Shema Yisrael in the Holocaust, in Nazi Germany, you can die. If you said the Shema Yisrael in Spain, in Portugal, in Poland, in different parts of the world where there was inquisitions, you can die. I can understand why you've gotten to the point where you don't even know the Shema Yisrael, or your kid doesn't know the Shema Yisrael, I can't understand. But if you told me that there are over 1 million children in Israel today that do not know Shema Yisrael, I don't understand. And I don't understand until today. I didn't understand. I told you about the story, but I didn't understand until today what that means. I grew up in Israel until I was 10 years old. I wasn't the most religious, but I certainly wasn't the most secular. We went into a Masorti school where we had a kippah on, but there were boys and girls in the same school. Some of the teachers were religious, some of the teachers were not so religious. But everybody had a certain respect. But when we came to America, when I was 10 years old, I went to public school. I went to school with everybody, Jews, Gentiles. There was no Torah, there was no mitzvot, there was no nothing. But I did know the Shema Yisrael. I did know that there are certain things about Judaism. Some we followed, some we didn't. Until later on in my life when we did TeShuva. The concept of somebody living in the land of Israel and not knowing Shema Yisrael, I heard about it, I read about it, but I never believed until today. When I heard the Rishon LeZion say the story, after I heard also my own Rav Efraim say the story, I didn't know what to do with myself. And this story is a story that just happened. In this war that we're in right now, against the Palestinian terrorists that coined themselves different names, one of them being Hamas. Unfortunately, while the media is constantly harping on the fact that Palestinians are dying, people are forgetting that the Jews are dying too. And one of these Jews, soldier, young, healthy, beginning of his life, was in the war, was under fire, a bomb went off, he got hurt. He got hurt really bad. He realized that he's dying. In his last moments before he died, he called his father. He called his father and he told his father, Abba, I'm here. I got hurt by the bomb. I'm surrounded by these different Palestinians. They're shooting at me. They're coming closer. And I know that one way or another, I'm going to die very soon. Abba, what do you say before you die? As a Jew, I know that there's something you're supposed to say. What do you say? The young soldier grew up in such a secular house in Israel that he did not know what to say before you die. He did not know what Shema Yisrael is. And he wasn't the only one on that call who did not know what Shema Yisrael was. Because his father, after catching himself and trying to figure out what's happening here, he told his son, I don't know, son. I don't know what you say. Or is there anything Jewish I can say? I know I died. I'm a Jew. What do I say? What does a Jew say when he dies? And the father also doesn't know. Meaning this is already a second generation. A second generation of somebody who does not know what it means to be a Jew, but he's willing to die for it. And the father says, I don't know what to say. Say something Jewish. He said, Abba, what's Jewish? What do you say that's Jewish? He said, say mezuzah. Say mezuzah. And the young soldier that's bleeding out says mezuzah, mezuzah, and dies. This story was told by his own father, And it's a story that happened. It's a story that should have never happened. Regardless of what your opinion of the war is, your opinion of the government is, the reality is, Rabotai Yekarim, that as much as the father is at fault for his son's ignorance, and the wicked government is at fault for putting us in a situation where our soldiers are dying, the religious community is at fault for that kid not knowing Shema Yisrael. If not 100%, a big majority. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to destroy the Bet HaMikdash and kill millions of his own children, he decided to kill the religious community first, those that knew the Torah, those that learned Torah. He hurt us first. He killed us first. He punished us first. Why? Because we did not do enough to help our brothers learn what is Torah, learn what is mitzvot, because we figured, they don't want it. They don't want it, so just leave them be. Let them stay secular. We'll just accept them as they are. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no. There's no accepting them as they are. They're my children, you're my children. They have to follow the Torah, you have to follow the Torah. When they don't, both of you are guilty. Rabotai Yekarim, as much as everybody says, listen, we have to help the frum community because there's problems there. And we have to help the people that are not frum because there's problems there. How is it that we're all crying when we hear this story that there are over 1 million Jews in the land of Israel? I'm not even talking about the rest of the world. In the land of Israel that do not know Shema Yisrael. How is it that we are not crying about this every single day to the point where we, each and every single one of us that knows the weekly parasha, each and every single one of us that knows how to say blessings, each and every single one of us that has a few dollars in their pocket, how is it that we are not doing kiruv every single day? How is it possible that you can call yourself a religious Jew and yet let your brothers and sisters that are secular continue living their life without a care in the world? Now, you may not be the right fit and the right personality to teach. You may not be the right fit and the right personality or the right schedule to go distribute books, to go give out USBs. But you could do something. You could share something on the internet. You could invite people to Shiur Torah. You could support Kiruv, donate some money. You could do something. How is it that we're spending all of our money on things like a Pesach vacation that's $30,000, $40,000, a wig for $10,000, $15,000, all types of camps for the kids, $5,000, $10,000, but yet we don't have $5,000, $10,000 to give to Kiruv, $5,000, $10,000 to help Am Yisrael learn Shema Yisrael, Ribono Shel Olam. When you see people, they have campaigns to build an extension to a yeshiva, build an extension to a synagogue, build an extension to some huge building already. You see people gathering together, sending millions of dollars, but you tell them, listen, let's help Am Yisrael become Am Yisrael. Let's help Am Yisrael become Jewish, more Jewish than the Jewish that they're in. What do you see? Oh yeah, okay, I'll send, like $5 or $100 or literally 1% of what they send everything else. Rabotai Yekarim, we're in a situation where right now, what Rabbi Ovadia Yosef said years ago that he dreamt about 1 million Jews not knowing the Shema Yisrael is no longer correct. Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, his son, said, right now we have 1.5 million Jews living in Israel today who do not know the Shema Yisrael. Until today, Rabotai Yekarim, I heard it, I read it, it was hard for me to believe it. It was hard for me to believe it. But today I believe it. When a Jewish soldier is willing to sacrifice his life because he's Jewish, because he's protecting his Jewish family, he's willing to die for them. It's a praiseworthy act. But it's sad. that we let him down and we didn't have enough time, enough opportunity, enough Chassidut to care about him, to make sure that he knew Shema Yisrael. Rabotai Yekerim, Chassidut is an extraordinary teaching. That whether you want to be a Chassid or you don't want to be a Chassid, that's not the purpose of this series. The purpose of the series is first and foremost to understand what is Chassidut. Second is to know whether you're on that path or not. But third is to take different parts of it and apply it to your life, even if you don't want to be a Chassid. Why? Because it's just good to do. It's good to do good. I bet that if more of us cared enough about that soldier, like the Chassid does in the Gemara, to burn his nails, that the Chassid told the Admor of Kotzk that he burned his nails because he didn't want to hurt another Jew. If we cared enough about Jews, as much as we do about not wanting to hurt other Jews, if we cared about their neshamot, as much as we cared about their body, I bet more people would know the Shema Yisrael. Nobody would die without knowing what to say before they meet their Maker. Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk taught the foundation of Chassidut. Now, some of it is irrelevant to the average person. It's just a faraway story, a faraway endeavor, something that a tzaddik did and some tzaddikim will do. But some of the things anybody can do if they care. If they care. BeEzrat HaShem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us the strength, the good health to learn together with you what is Chassidut, enough to know about it, of what we could apply to our lives, what we have to run away from that may look like Chassidut but in reality is idol worship, is heresy. Sometimes a person can come up to you in the middle of the street to pretend to be a friend, to pretend to be a brother, but quickly you find out that this is an idol worshiper from the church that calls himself a Messianic Jew. So Chassidut will help us identify what's heresy, what's idolatry, what's serving HaShem with the minimum requirement, what's serving HaShem with above and beyond the requirement. But most importantly, Chassidut will give us an idea of what's possible. What's possible? And BeEzrat HaShem, we succeed. Thank you very much for learning with me. BeEzrat HaShem, we'll talk more, we'll learn more later this week. If HaShem wills it and gives us the health, we'll learn a lot more. Because there's a lot more to learn, especially with what's going on in the world today. And BeEzrat HaShem will succeed. Anyone that wants to help us continue teaching, distributing things for free, the books, the USBs, the videos, and all the wonderful things that the organization is doing to help us feed the poor in Israel, both spiritually poor and materially poor. We're doing a huge distribution right now, actually, that we're looking to do a big thing for right after Tisha B'Av to try to help the world of Torah. Now that the government has passed a law against it, against helping the world of Torah, now we're going to do even more, BeEzrat HaShem. So when they shut off their fountains, they're giving us an opportunity to do more. So we'll start a new campaign for it very soon, but anyone that wants to help in the meantime, you could go and donate on bhtorah.org, or you could donate on beezrathashem.org, or you could donate by being a paid subscriber on YouTube, or donating on our app. There's plenty of ways that you could donate if you'd like. Either way, BeEzrat HaShem, we'll succeed. Kol Tuv, b'chal b'atzlacha.
No matter where I look, things are just not okay. Any place to hide, no ways to run away. There's not even time to ease the pain. I cannot believe how much I'm saying those things are what I'm most afraid. Run before there is no more time to cross the gate. The light on brings heavy tears. Desire got our ears pierced. Time to return, I will live forever. Time to go back to him, it's now or never. Those chasing dreams don't know any better. We're here to fight and serve HaShem. Time to return, I will live forever. Time to go back to him, it's now or never. Those chasing dreams don't know any better. We're here to fight out to pretend. For years I thought the world was all beneath my feet. Now I'm all surrounded by my enemies. Their blades are sharp, we build them strong. Night seems too dark to carry on, sails to blame. Hoshienu HaShem. Run before there is no more time to cross the gate. The light on brings heavy tears. Teshuvah will stop the sneers. Time to return, I will live forever. Time to go back to him, it's now or never. Those chasing dreams don't know any better. We're here to fight and serve HaShem. Time to return, I will live forever. Time to go back to him, it's now or never. Those chasing dreams don't know any better. We're here to find out to pretend. Cause we did not come here to pretend. Don't be taken for a fool again. No. Look at the mirrors you used to blame. Wasn't written down in our script to time to return, I will live forever. Time to go back to him, it's now or never. Those chasing dreams don't know any better. We're here to fight and serve HaShem. Time to return, I will live forever.